Is anyone here from? Michael. Yeah, that's fine. Carter. Okay, we're just getting a little bit settled in, just so that everyone knows. Co-chair Eugene Yu is on his way. Might give him a minute or two. We're going to hear, we'll introduce in a minute. We're going to hear 601 first. And I believe Michael Curley, you're here. Is Richard, Michael? Michael, are you alone or is there someone else on your team waiting?
Yes, Richard Bass from my team at Acremed should also be somewhere in the waiting room. He'll be providing the presentation.
Okay, we're promoting him as we speak.
There he is.
Okay. Okay.
Did you all hear me okay?
Frederick is Eugene. Huh? Do you see Eugene?
No. He's got a tree.
Well, it's 6:36. Oh,
Wow.
oh,
He has to come on time for that.
should we wait another minute? Do you think we should wait another minute or two? What do you think?
No, I don't think we should be late. It's 6 minutes.
Okay, fine. Okay, good evening. The first item on the agenda is 60 Washington Street Parking Authorization.
Yes.
Excuse me, Katie, do you want to introduce everyone around?
Yeah, that's a good idea. But I will just read the agenda item.
Yeah.
Application to the Department of City Planning pursuant to section 13-442 of the zoning resolution for authorization to facilitate a new 7-space automated parking facility in an existing 10-unit residential development. So Richard and Michael will go around the room so you know who everyone here is. My name is Katie Bordenaro. I'm co-chair of the Land Use and Housing Committee.
David Gruber, a member of CB2.
Carter Booth, member of CB2.
Anita Brandt, board member.
Donna Raftery, board member.
Michael Levine, board member.
Susan Wittenberg, board member. Frederica Siegel, land use committee member.
Yeah, we're all committee members. Board members. Okay, Carter, I'm gonna sign you in. Okay, so who is giving the presentation? Did you say it's Richard?
I'm going to be, Richard Bass is speaking and I'll be giving the presentation.
You need to put any, materials up?
I'm going to in a second. I just wanted to say hi to Michael Levine. I've worked with him for many decades.
We were very good colleagues. It's good to see you and hear you again.
Good to see you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'll walk you through the proposal.
Okay, we're just being joined by my colleague and co-chair Eugene Yu. So it's perfect timing. We're just beginning the presentation and we'll all be able to hear it.
Okay, I'll wait for him to make himself comfortable.
Thank you. You can actually go ahead. That's fine.
Are you a chess player? Did I see that online?
No, I think that's another Eugene view.
Okay. And my son's in St. Louis, and for some reason, St. Louis is the center of the chess world in America. So I was going to kibitz with you on that.
No,
Okay.
there's a chess player, and I think there's a CEO out there somewhere.
Okay.
But he's our famed co-chair, so we're happy to have.
Okay, 601 Washington Street is a city planning authorization. The applicant is HAD SW LLC. I'm with the law firm. Michael and I are with the law firm of Ackerman LLP. We have 2 sets of architects who worked on the development. The site occupies the north face of Leroy Street between Washington and Greenwich, as you can see on this tax map. It's about 50 by 170 something, a little shy of it's a little over 8,900 square feet. Here's a zoning and land use map. It's located in one of the MX zones, one of the earlier ones. You all, I think, reviewed this back about 20 years ago. The underlying zoning is an M15/R7X. Here's a really small zoning map, which shows the location of the proposed project and the zoning. This is, I think, an important slide. The upper three pictures are what the site used to look like. It was a one-story taxpayer. It had four curb cuts. The existing building, which was finished in 2021, is a 9-story building, a little shy of 5 FAR, and it has 10 sold dwelling units. The picture on the left where my cursor is moving is showing it from Leroy and Washington. The other corner is Leroy and Greenwich. Under this authorization,
Can you tell us, you had said that was very important. Why is it important?
Oh, it's a before and after.
Okay.
You know,
I thought it might show something specific that we're going to hear.
No. It's really showing what the site used to look like with 4 curb cuts, and now an existing building with 1 proposed curb cut. The findings, which I'll go into, are safety related. And so, 1 curb cut is safer than 4 curb cuts. The logic of that. So the findings are to permit 7 parking spaces. This authorization can allow up to 15 parking spaces by the City Planning Commission. And, I'll read through what the findings are, and we can discuss this as we go along. But the first finding is the location of the entrances and exits to the parking facility will not unduly interrupt the flow of pedestrian traffic associated with uses or public facilities, including access points to mass transit facilities, in close proximity thereto, or result in any undue conflict between pedestrian and vehicular movement due to the entering and leaving movements of vehicles. We're proposing 7 parking spaces and an automated garage. They will always face forward as they exit, and there's no conflict as cars enter and leave. The location of the entrances and exits to such parking facilities will not interfere with the efficient functioning of streets, including any lanes designated for specific types of users or vehicles, due to the entering and leaving movements of vehicles. That such use will not create or contribute to serious traffic congestion and will not unduly inhibit surface traffic and pedestrian flow. And the final finding is such parking facility will not be inconsistent with the character of the existing streetscape. So here's the proposed location and operation of the automated garage. It has 7 spaces. The cars would pull in. This is Leroy. I'm running my cursor here. This is Greenwich. We already have an approval from the Department of Buildings that if this parking authorization is approved, we can have a curb cut at this location. There's a fire hydrant here, so there'll be clear, there won't be any parking between the curb cut and the corner, so it'll be easy for people to see coming in and out. The car would pull in, it would then be loaded down into the parking area. The car would flip around, it would rotate on so that when it was time to leave, it would be facing forward and not backing out onto the sidewalk or onto the street, which also makes it safer. There'll be a stop sign here. And here's how it reminds me of Horn and Hearted when I was a kid, and you would see the things move around. I know I'm dating myself, but the cars would move around as they were called. Again, a greater description of the location. And another view of how the cars would come down the elevator, turn around in the space, face out, and then wait to be called. And that's, in short, my presentation. We can discuss anything you would, if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yes, Michael?
Yes, Richard, is it an attended parking garage or just only the residents have access to it?
Only the residents have access to it. It's they call down, they can call the car to be in the chute, so to speak. But no, there won't be an attendant. It's fully automated. This applicant and this operator have done a 121 car automated parking at 24 Leonard Street. So doing a 7-car automated parking should be relatively easy.
Thank you.
I have a question.
David?
Hi. Excuse me. So how many residence units were in the building? You mentioned it. I just.
There's 10 units.
And you're asking for 9 spots.
No, seven spots.
Otherwise, I got it exactly right. Now, if you don't fill all 7, are you opening it up to the public?
No, it would not be open to the public. The only people that will use it are people who live in the building.
Well, Richard, I'll give you a little background. David and I were deeply involved in this zoning, in the negotiations for the zoning for this little sliver 20 years ago on a
Yeah, it's a long
hot
time ago.
summer afternoon.
I read your resolution.
We weren't even on the community board then. We were representing the community because this was a big change. And I actually had been in the old building. It was the home of Pat LaFrida Meats, which has moved to New Jersey. I've been in the meat section and the residential section before. I haven't been in the new building. So, now, are the parking spaces being sold to the residents?
Yes, they'll be sold.
And do they have an app on their phone to open and to access? How do they, it's fully automated, but how do they initiate the automation? Do you know?
Michael, you can jump in, but I believe it's on their phone or they can call it from their homes.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the residents that have purchased a parking space will have access to an app where they can, from their apartment or, wherever else in proximity to the garage can go in and have their car retrieved. So if they aren't using the app, then they can alternatively walk down and go into the parking area physically and, retrieve it using the touch screen.
Inside the parking facility or on the sidewalk?
Inside the parking facility.
Oh, that's news. Okay.
But safer, the cars.
Much safe.
Yeah. Well, I do notice that your statement of findings were based on pedestrian studies from 2017 before Google existed a block away. And, we do have other parking garages across sidewalks here. No one wants a beep. The archive had a beep when cars went in and out. But is there any flashing light? What is the warning to the pedestrian that someone is coming across the sidewalk?
Yeah.
I don't, Michael, again, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there is a beep or flashing, but.
Okay. I think the intention is to have some sort of, we can confirm and get back to the board, but I believe the intention is to have some sort of, audio, visual, flashing, beeping, some sort of warning, so that, pedestrians are aware of the exiting vehicle. So I don't know the exact, mechanism, but we can confirm and report back.
We'll get that information and get back to you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Frederica says she's read that there's a light, but it'd be good to have the exact citation. And I just want to let you know that beeping beeping gets a lot of complaints. You know, you know what I mean? When we've had these beepings and then they have to be turned off, just so that you know. Unless they're required, but I don't think they are. Any other questions from the committee?
If they could just talk about a little bit, I'm assuming that you took into account Hudson River Park as a public facility. Is that right? With pedestrian traffic, because they just had the opening for Greenwich Village Little League, you know, this past weekend, and there's tremendous amount of foot traffic throughout that area, kids walking, etc. And there's a lot of traffic now. We have a new building that's there at Google, so there's going to be significantly more pedestrian traffic. There's a number of other buildings that are going to be coming online as well that are already in process. Can you just talk a little bit about, you know, how you factored those in to this project, just following what Katie said of, you know, utilizing information from 2017?
Right. So the you know, part of the issue of why the applicant is seeking the parking spaces is that there's been a reduction in available parking in the area. I think there's 3 or 4 parking facilities that are being proposed to close or have closed. The Google approval was for 1,000 parking spaces, and there's going to be thousands of workers going there. So the competition for parking in the area became greater because there is more demand and less supply. So having you know, discrete number of parking spaces in the building seemed de minimis and seemed to be logical. The people that own these units will own parking and will own vehicles. So they, you know, it's easier having them park in the building or for them to find other less available parking in the area. And in terms of the facility, my son played Little League there, so I know it personally.
Frederica?
Could you just go rewind to the 1,000 parking spaces that I understood you say Google has 1,000 parking spaces?
Yeah, the approval that Google got, or the official title was 550 Washington, was for a little shy of 1,000 parking spaces. That the community board voted for.
Yeah, I would like a little, I don't know how many parking spaces are there at Pier 40? There's nowhere near 1,000.
I think that was when it was going to be mixed residential.
Housing, maybe. Yeah, I think that's, I'd like you to look into that. Not that it's germane, but I'd just like to have you clarify that.
We don't think that's correct.
Yeah,
Are you asking me to provide the resolutions approving that parking?
No, it's nothing to do specifically with what you're asking for, but you said it, so I'd be interested to know the evidence for it.
Sure, I'll either later tonight or tomorrow morning early, I will forward the city planning and city council resolutions for that approval.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the committee?
I would just like to
Are you, okay, you'll be first.
like to say that I visited the Google
You have to,
building.
but you have to come up to.
Sorry, I visited the Google building quite recently when they had their opening,
Right.
and I don't think that there was a garage facility mentioned. It's on the roof. Okay.
Thank you.
To see that, but I do not know the exact amount of space.
Okay. That's Roy Ruiz from Deborah Glick's office. Thank you, Roy. Okay, I think there might be some questions from the public if no more committee. Who has his hand up? Oh, David has another question. No. Oh, Pete, can you bring him along? And I think there was something in the chat, Pete.
May I ask Richard to take down his presentation?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
5:50.
All right, Pete, you can speak. You can unmute.
Hello, thank you. My question is, there was a special permit granted for 42 Crosby Street in Soho for a similar looking operation where the cars go in, they're taken down, they spin around and they're put in their slots. And that was that was for tenants only, but the tenants didn't, they paid a fee, a very hefty fee of $1 million per car. But they didn't own the space. That was actually, according to what I've read, a license from the building to the car owner to use the service. Is that a similar situation we're seeing here?
Not that I know of. In conversations with my client, they were going to sell the spaces, but I'll follow up with him tonight and confirm that tomorrow. But 42 Crosby was a special permit, which is a really different animal than the authorization we're seeking. But I will confirm on the future ownership of the parking spaces.
Okay, so this is not a special permit. This is some other mechanism to allow this to.
Right. The authorization allows for buildings that don't have parking existing to seek up to 15 parking spaces.
Thank you.
I see a question from Lynn Pacifico. I suppose that there is no affordable housing in this building. Lynn, this is fully built out, has been for a while, and there was no affordable housing included, but it's a different.
Sure, there's no.
Yeah,
Sure, there's no affordable. housing.
there's no affordable housing.
No affordable.
Now, are there any other hands in the room where, I'm sorry that I can't hear you.
Just
Oh.
a question of interest. If there's 10 units and you're allowed 15 spaces, why aren't you asking at least for 10?
I think, part logic, we're trying to fit in an existing building, a mechanical parking facility. The building wasn't designed to hold 10 parking spaces, and I think 7 safely fits the building.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you, Richard and Michael. Is anything else
I
you need?
have a question back to you all. I apologize. It's been a while since I've been before CB2. Your full board is on the 18th.
Thursday.
So do you take a vote tonight? Do you take a vote on Thursday? Do I present on Thursday?
We will take a vote tonight. You're welcome to stay for our business section to hear our vote, or you can call the office in the morning and find out what our vote is. And then we will prepare a resolution reflecting that vote, and it will be at the full board on Thursday. Generally, I don't know if anyone else, generally applicants who generally don't present at the full board unless there's some contention or issue that,
No, they don't. You could speak.
you can speak for 2 minutes in the public session, but generally applicants
Right.
don't do.
That's how it used to be. I just wanted to check.
It still is the same.
Okay, good.
And Michael, if you wouldn't mind hanging on, if you can, I have actually another hearing at 7 o'clock. So I don't mean to be rude, but I'm going to duck out.
Oh, you're talking to Michael Curley. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Not Michael
Yeah.
Levine.
Right.
I'll stick on as long as I can.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. If not,
Okay.
we'll touch base with the community board staff in the morning. And George, good seeing you too.
Very good.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you all. Be well, be safe. Okay.
Bye, Richard.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
I was just gonna say one last question, because I'm looking at the requirements here and the findings. So could you just explain why this facility would not be inconsistent with the character of the existing streetscape?
Michael? Is Michael still up?
Is he still there?
Yep. Hi. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Okay, great. So I mean, in terms of the existing streetscape, we would not have, compared to the previous conditions on the site, there were, I think Richard mentioned during the presentation, I think, there were 3 or 4 very large curb cuts. And there was kind of, parking on the curbs and other conditions like that were common as associated with the Frida location. So compared to those conditions, the proposed condition of only 1 curb cut, makes for a much more orderly sidewalk, and is not inconsistent with other sidewalks along this stretch of Washington Street. So most other sidewalks to the west and to the east have at least 1 or 2 if not more curb cuts. And in terms of trees and the width and the other characteristics of the sidewalk, it is similar to the other sidewalks along that stretch.
okay, Carter. Thank you, Michael.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, I see that we've been joined by George Jane. Very familiar face to us now. Thank you. And so we can turn to number 2 on the agenda and begin our discussion of the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, the Citywide Zoning Text Amendment, which we expect to be certified later this month. April 29th is an educated guess. Good evening, George. Thank you for making time again tonight.
I am very happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. May I share my screen?
Yes.
Sorry, let me start at the beginning. Okay, so I am here to talk about City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, as you just heard. The City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is one of the 3 zoning text amendments. The first one, zoning for carbon neutrality, was passed and it's done. It has become law in December. Zoning for economic opportunity, there was a hearing on Monday at City Council. They are expected to vote by the end of May. There were significant edits or modifications, as they call them, from the CPC to the text that you saw that reflected a lot of comments from community boards, but also from the Department of Buildings and others. So that was good that there were a lot of comments that were made on that. And then finally, zoning for housing opportunity. As you heard, it's set to be referred out by the end of April, but I have heard that we're going to get draft zoning text this week, maybe as soon as tomorrow. What they did in economic opportunity is that they released draft text first and then final text when it was referred. And I'm expecting something like that this week. Okay, and so let's get into housing opportunity. We have other resources, even though we don't have the zoning text yet. We have the draft. Most of it is the draft scope of work for the EIS. And there's the environmental assessment, and there have been these information sessions, some of which were better than others. I have links in the deck, which I will provide Mark after the meeting. The scope of work is really the most valuable thing because it gives us these detailed descriptions of the proposals without the zoning text. And you should know that a lot of City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is going to impact the R1 through R5 districts, which are the areas in blue on this map, and will have absolutely no impact on your community district. I don't want to say most of it, but certainly large chunks of it will have no impact in your community district. And we're not going to address any of those today. Other than I'm going to say that there are some significant changes out there, and I'm sure that the folks in Eastern Queens are going to have something to say about this. But for your community district, I think that there are 7 things that are really significant that we're going to get into. The universal affordability preference, or basically more FAR for affordable housing. Number 2 is allowing buildings made up of very small units. Number 3, changes to make infill on height factor housing estates easier and bigger. Number 4 is exempt quality housing buildings from the sliver rule. Number 5, expand the dates for non-residential building conversions into residences. Number 6 is floating floor area from historic districts. This is probably the most important, or certainly most significant for your community district. And number 7 is the elimination of the special treatment for Manhattan core zoning districts. All right, so universal affordability preference, or more FAR for affordable housing, is essentially this amendment's affordability program. And it builds off of something that already exists called AIRS. AIRS is Affordable Independent Residences for Seniors, which is an existing zoning bonus program that gives additional floor area to projects with affordable units for seniors. And it was adopted in its current form in 2016 as part of zoning for quality and affordability, but it hasn't been very popular. And it was suspended for much of its existence due to fair housing concerns. It wouldn't surprise me if none of you have heard of this, because really there haven't been very many AIRS buildings developed. AIRS gives a FAR bonus for affordable senior housing that averages 80% of AMI. And the size of the AIRS bonus, the FAR bonus, varies by district. And essentially what universal affordability preference is going to do, it expands the AIRS program from senior housing to all affordable housing. And DCP has said that the universal affordability preference will have average AMIs lower than AIRS. One of the problems with AIRS is that the 80% AMI really didn't work for affordable senior housing. It needed to be lower. And that was a problem that they see with UAP as well. They want to make it lower, at least on average. So the FAR and height bonuses for UAP are substantial, but they're in line with the AIRS, right? So the FAR bonuses will range from 20 to up to 77% from the basic, the basic a basic core FAR. And the larger percentage increases are in the lower density districts. So these are the zoning districts you currently have in CD2. Their core, the basic FAR, the AIRS FAR, the universal affordability preference FAR, and then the change from the basic, and then the increase in FAR. Now, in most cases, it's exactly the same as AIRS. There are a couple places where the AIRS didn't give a bonus, and UAP always gives a bonus. So that's, that's basically the major. Yep.
Can we see that slide one more
Absolutely.
time?
Yeah, and understand that you're going to get a copy of this, right? So
Yeah,
you don't have to take a picture or anything.
yeah, no, I understand. I just need to look at it one more second.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of R7 too. Okay. One FAR. So it is close to the AIRS, as you say.
Yeah, it is very close to the AIRS. There's only a few districts like the R8B, which you don't have in yours, which didn't give an AIRS bonus. R9s didn't give an AIR bonus, but they will get a UAP bonus.
Good? Are you good?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Thank you, George.
Okay, no problem. All right, and then this is a replacement of the optional inclusionary bonus the R10 inclusionary bonus with universal affordability preference. So currently, the R10 equivalent districts can get a 20% FAR bonus with only 5% affordable housing. It's a ridiculous bonus program that was adopted in the 80s, and it just didn't require affordable housing in proportion to the bonus. As we adopted more, like the inclusionary housing program or the mandatory inclusionary housing program, we never fixed this. And what housing opportunity will do will fix this. It'll essentially make the bonus proportional to the affordability by increasing the amount of affordability required out of R10 districts. Now, this doesn't affect your community district very much, at least right now. You only have one R10 area up here and a couple of scattered commercial equivalents. So it's not a very big deal in your district, but I think from a policy perspective, this was low-hanging fruit that needs to be fixed.
We have one question on this.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. When you say that the R10 equivalent districts can get a bonus that can be placed off-site, what exactly is the commitment and the timing of the commitment for that placement off-site? Is it like hypothetical? Is it an actual address?
Oh, it's an actual, okay, to get the bonus, you actually have to get a affordable housing certificate from HPD, which identifies the units that you're supporting by address,
In another location.
in another location. It has to be in the community district or within 1/2 mile of the site. So if
And
you're at
then-
the edge of the community district, you can go into the next one.
Thanks. And the construction of it is within what time frame?
Oh, it doesn't have to be new. It could
No,
be,
Can it be like a developer is going to build it 20 years from now, or?
no, it actually it could be supporting existing affordable housing that's rolling off the program. But it has to be developed within a relatively short time frame. I can't give you the exact number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other
Yeah, no
questions?
problem.
Okay, thanks, George. We can
Just,
go with the Carter.
is that all built?
What?
The spot in blue, it's.
Oh, is the R10?
Oh, that's the R10. I just
Yeah,
highlighted the R10 district.
No, I understand, but the existing conditions, is it all built? I mean,
It's not
if that's the only R10,
Isn't that Fifth Avenue?
yeah.
It is Fifth Avenue, and there are a couple like this part up here is a C64, which is an R10 equivalent. Most of this is a landmark district up in the top. That's not. I don't know how often this is going to be, a point, but I think it's important from a Manhattan perspective, where there's lots of these areas, to get this thing fixed, because ultimately it'll produce more affordable housing with a better policy. Again, it's not a major deal in your district.
Yeah, I was inquiring about potential, right?
Right.
If
Are you asking if it's underbuilt at this point?
exactly, yeah. Just so we can properly understand how much attention to focus.
Yeah, I haven't given it a formal analysis. I do know that the very top of this has a couple of sites. We're actually going to look at the C64 a little bit more closely up here for the landmark transfers. Again, there will be a few places, but again, not very many.
David?
Yeah, hi. So, under the program, if there's a 20% boost in FAR, you're saying that it would be 20% a proportional amount of affordable housing, 20%.
That's right. That's right.
As opposed to 5%.
Yes.
But the entire building gets the FAR bonus, right? Of course.
Right. So it would go from 10 FAR to 12 FAR.
Right. So 80% of that is market rate.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's still like, okay. So instead of 20%, instead of 5%, which was, I agree, ridiculous. Now there's 20% affordable, but still 80% benefit from the boost of FAR.
That's right.
Okay. So again, it's like, another policy that doesn't make complete sense in my mind.
Doesn't address the problem.
Well, the whole.
And I'll also point out, it still remains optional, right? It's, if you don't want to produce any affordable housing, you don't have to.
That's right, it's mandatory, but you don't get the bonus.
Yes, but you
Okay.
don't get the bonus. That's right.
Understood.
All right.
Okay, can we go on to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
so another one about this isn't UAP specifically, but it is giving more FAR for affordable housing. So they propose removing the special permit to use community facility FAR for supportive housing. This special permit went into effect in 2016. It's been used a few times where, if you have a supportive housing building, you can get a CPC special permit right now to use the community facility FAR. If you don't get that special permit, your supportive housing is limited to the residential FAR. And so what they're proposing is to remove the special permit requirement and replace it with the CPC authorization. So a CPC authorization, you might remember this from economic opportunity. It is a non-ULURP action. You will see a copy of the application and they will ask you for your opinion. However, the council member will never see it and they will not be asked to vote on it. So it is, and also the City Planning Commission does not hold a hearing for an authorization. So it's a different process, but it is still a process.
So all community facility FAR goes if there's affordable housing, regardless of AMI or anything, not just the supportive.
No, this is just for supportive housing.
That's what
Supportive
it is
housing,
now.
yeah, that's what it is now, and that's what it would be in the future.
What's
But
the change? I thought it's
The
all
changes,
housing.
the change is getting rid of the special permit.
So there's no CB input or no city council input.
We see special permits. We don't see
Right,
authorization.
But aren't they referred to us just out of for information purposes?
yes.
So you are supposed to get authorizations. There aren't very many authorizations right now. The city council, or sorry, the CPC is proposing to expand authorizations enormously. The ones that most community or that some community boards see are for fresh authorizations, which are for extra FAR for grocery stores in places that are, essentially grocery store fresh food deserts, which is not you. So you don't see very many of them, but it is, the fact that you haven't seen one or hasn't seen one in a long time doesn't mean very much, right? There just aren't that many of them. They really want to have a lot more though, because with economic opportunity in this, they're adding, a dozen authorizations. It's a brand new process. So again, this one is just about changing this from a ULURP action to a non-ULURP action. And they believe that will allow for more applications to
Only for supportive public housing.
only for supportive housing. That is correct.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, number two, moving on out of more FAR for affordable housing. Housing opportunity will changes will permit buildings with all studio apartments. So currently the way it works is zoning prevents developers from developing an apartment building with all small units. And it does this with this concept called a dwelling unit factor, which right now is 680 square feet. And the way it works is all the residential floor area that could be built on a site is divided by 680 square feet. And the number of units in that development must be less than that result. And the idea is they didn't want to have too many units in a single building. And in 2016, the dwelling unit factor lowered in high density zoning districts to this uniform 680 square feet we see now. And housing opportunity will remove it entirely. And this change comes with no requirement for affordable housing. This is just a policy change to allow for buildings with all studios if developers want to do it. We see demand for these types of buildings in different markets, like in East Harlem, they're always bumping up against the 680 square foot limit. And they would go smaller if they could in East Harlem.
So is this
Right.
is this an authorization or is this as of right?
This would be as of right,
As of right.
completely as of right.
In every zone.
In every high density zone, every zone in your district, there's still in the low density areas there'd still be some dwelling unit factor in place. Okay, making infill on housing estates easier. So you don't have very many of these tower in the park developments, but you do have Washington Square Village, which
I said,
is
We're
You know,
sitting on one now, yeah.
yeah, right. Okay. I mean, there are a few, but there aren't. It's not like you're the East Village, right? Which has a ton of them. And the changes are going to make putting new buildings on the open space of all Tower in the Parks developments much easier. And you know, the way it works now is currently the Tower in the Park zoning we have encourages infill of very tall towers. I'm bringing this one up. This is 200 Amsterdam, which is not in your district, but it's a good example because it's essentially the same residential equivalent as Washington Square Village. And in this case, you know, the zoning basically encouraged the placement of a 670-foot tower on the campus of Lincoln Towers and if you want to do something like this, where you want to do low scale infill in a height factor estate, you just can't do it. The rules don't allow you to do it, but you can do the very tall towers like 200 Amsterdam. And so City VS for Housing Opportunity is going to make major changes to how we consider infill on these estates. It was going to permit quality housing infill so long as the overall FAR does not exceed the quality housing maximum FAR for the zoning district. And this is a very big deal because it's going to allow substantially more FAR in most Tower in the Park estates. That's because the quality housing FAR is typically higher than the height factor FAR. And so if you're allowing quality housing infill at the quality housing FAR, that's a boost to the FAR. So I just did some back of the envelope calculations, and that's another 500,000 square feet of development on the open space of Washington Square Village. And to make sure that this floor area could be used, there are other amendments that they're proposing as well. And the big one, and this one really surprised me, was eliminating the open space ratio. The open space ratio is a ratio of building size to open space, which ensured that these height factor estates had enough and maintained ample open space for use of the residents, right? It wasn't public open space. It wasn't a plaza. It was open space that needed to be, that residents could use. And essentially that open space ratio and that required minimum open space from the open space ratio is gone, or at least proposed to be gone. And it also reduces the minimum required distance between buildings. Right now, if you have one of these estates, you need 60 feet for most tall buildings between building walls. And this would match the minimum in the multiple dwelling law, which is 40 feet. And another surprising thing was that they're making all of these changes and there is no affordability required to take advantage of these zoning changes. This is just a rule change to zoning and it would all be as of right. It would not require an authorization.
This is just a give present to the real estate industry.
Well, I would call it a supply side solution, or at least that's what some people would say.
Thank you for that.
Right. It's like
awesome.
there are people who believe that if you just make more and more housing, that it, regardless of its affordability, and that's really what a lot of this is. It's about how you spur the development of more housing.
Anita had a question on that slide, George.
Yes, I do. The open space ratio. It calls to eliminate it.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
completely.
that be pretty drastic as far as the light and air and?
So it proposes to eliminate it and replace it with coverage and yard requirements. Most of these things don't have yard requirements because they're on full blocks, and the coverage requirements are generally pretty low. So yeah, it's a pretty big change.
Yeah.
It is a
And
pretty big
zoning is
change.
to protect light and air, so I'm just thinking this might be something that would hurt us in the long run.
Yeah, you know, it's a bigger deal in other districts. It's a bigger deal in 3. It's a bigger deal in 6 because there are many of these campuses. But you know, if you live in one of these, it's inviting a major change to the open spaces that you probably use and enjoy.
George, I have a question.
Raise your hand. I was,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael. It's okay.
no, I defer to your,
Okay, real
Yard.
I know in Lower Manhattan, you could replace the open space requirement by providing open space elsewhere in the building. On terraces, on
Yeah,
roofs.
on the roof. Yep.
And that's been used a lot in Lower Manhattan.
Yep.
Is any of that in here or is that not at all here?
Michael, I don't think it is. I think it's gone completely.
So it's completely gone. There are no
Completely
options.
Yeah.
There are no alternative ways of meeting that open space.
No, they're not even trying to do it. Again, they're saying coverage in yards. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
So, would this supersede a special zoning district that addresses some of these issues?
So
Because we're sitting in a special zoning district now, which called for infill housing, and would this supersede that and be more dominant?
So
Well-
it's likely that they will make changes to the zoning districts to reflect the intention of these changes, the special zoning districts to reflect the intention of these changes. They
So
have
they would
not.
modify a special zoning district in order
That's
to
right.
accommodate this.
Yeah,
Which is a-
that's what they did under
is-
economic opportunity, is that they tried to change all of the special zoning districts to reflect the main changes, and I would expect the same thing this time.
Now, would that be usurpable? It's a special zoning district was, you like that, usurpable. It took me a long time to learn how to say that. It's not just something I've been practicing all day. Is that usurpable?
It should
Well,
be.
they'll be changing it all at the same time, meaning we're going to be getting one monster zoning text amendment, and it will include the main body of the zoning as well as the special districts.
So
And
this is another one size fits all proposal by a city that's too lazy to really look at a city of 9 million people and say, hey, it's radically different. It's not one size fits all. But this is that's what you're saying. They're going to change every special zoning district without having it usurped in order to like steamroll over something that took years to create. And this is the NYU special zoning district.
yeah.
We're seeing it now, it's taken us years to do. And now you're saying that this gets washed away.
Well, listen, we'll see what it says on when the text comes out.
No,
I was
understand.
extraordinarily disappointed with how they treated special districts in economic opportunity. I mean, there were some of them they hardly changed at all, and others they changed radically in terms of just dependent on how they dealt with uses. We'll see when the text comes out, hopefully in a couple of days, and we can look into that.
And this is all CPC and DCP, right?
Yeah, DCP.
Yes, DCP, and it has to be approved by the CPC. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just add one thing, just in general to the committee and also to George. So for these, I know that not all of these affect our district. This affects Washington Square Village, but there's going to be parts of housing opportunity that don't affect us. We had a call with DCP in the last few days, and they actually told us they want our opinion on those pieces of housing opportunity, that even if they don't affect us directly,
Okay.
they do want to hear from us.
That's good.
Because there are butterfly effects, or downstream effects from all of that. So they do want us to have an opinion.
Okay, that's good information.
That's good to
Yeah,
know.
so it's not, we shouldn't just ignore it. Let's get
Nobody,
If I may add on to that, I will tell you that a lot of the changes in the lower density districts are well overdue. You have single family homes out there that have subway service, and you just go like, this is like, there's some places where you just really question the land use policies that were put into effect, and the political will out there has been such that they fought a lot of rezonings, and I'm sure that they are looking for support from your districts and others in Manhattan to get some of the outer boroughs to carry some new housing.
okay.
Okay, so and also on the housing estates, this is the infill still. It will permit a greater increase in height. So normally the quality housing buildings are height limited, from R6 to R9. But if you do an infill quality housing building, you can get up to 250, 285 feet, which is a significant increase. And again, this is all to make sure that they can use the extra floor area you get. And it's really something. I mean, I'm not from your district, but I do follow some of the NYU drama sometimes, and it's going to give them more options for future expansions for sure if this goes forward.
That's what they need.
I know.
Yeah.
We were so worried.
We're ready. Oh, we're ready.
All right. So number 4. So currently, the height of narrow buildings is limited to the width of the street on which it faces, right? This is the so-called sliver rule, which prevents very tall, slender buildings unless they abut another very tall building. And this has resulted in some odd development decisions. This is a building on 28th East 120. I'm sorry, East 28th Street. And what they did here is they cut off a tiny portion of their lot so that they did not front 3rd Avenue. If they had fronted 3rd Avenue, this building right here would have been limited to 100 feet. But they cut off this tiny portion of the lot, said it's not ours, and it didn't trigger sliver, and so it could be 210 feet tall, which it is.
That's why we love to go.
So they make big bucks.
I mean, I think everyone can agree we don't want zoning that produces results like this, little scraps of lots that are sitting around that are serving no function. It's not a good idea. And so what it's going to do is housing opportunity would eliminate the sliver rule entirely for all quality housing buildings. And, and there's some logic to this. Quality housing buildings are already height limited, and the district is tuned to the context of the neighborhood, right? These are contextual buildings. And sliver often applies to the small scale buildings located on mid blocks with height limits and that are slightly higher than the width of the street. So a lot of times you have a 75-foot height limit that's limited to a 60-foot street height. But it also matters in narrow buildings in higher density districts. And I pick out this one here, which is not in your district, but it's on 2nd Avenue. Sliver limited this building here to 100 feet because it's the width of the street on which it faces. And because it was limited to 100 feet, it could not use the optional 2 FAR affordable housing bonus. And so ended up producing 0 affordable units, sorry. But it clearly built out units. But, City of Yes for housing opportunity does not condition sliver relief on affordability, which also surprised me because in 2015, as they were rolling ZQA through the process, the city proposed lifting sliver for affordable buildings. They said that we'll give sliver relief if you have affordable units in the building. But that was removed at the time. I think it was either by city council or it was removed as a modification. So it never ended up in the zoning text. But now they're giving sliver relief with no requirement for affordability, which surprises me. So housing opportunity will increase the number of non-residential buildings that can be converted to residential use. So currently, non-residential buildings in your community district can be converted to residential use if they were built before 1961. And this is going to extend that date to 1990. It would also allow conversions to not only housing units, but also rooming units, which are rooms without kitchen or bathroom requirements that you would have for housing units, or supportive housing. And that conversions to non-housing units are currently prohibited. There's a lot of stuff about this we don't know. Like there's a lot of complaints that, you know, these commercial floor plates are bad because, you know, they don't have the light and air requirements. We don't know if there's going to be further relief from light and air on these conversions or not. There's going to be some detail that we're going to have to pick out of the text when it comes out.
What's the significance of 1990 as the cutoff?
Good question.
I can't tell you that, and it didn't explain it other than by saying when these rules, the 1961 rule went into effect, it was like 30 years ago or 25 years ago now. No, it was in like 1997, so it was close to 30 years ago. And so this is a similar time frame. I can't tell you any more than that because I don't know. Okay, number 6, and I think this is a really important one for you all, because City of Yes for Housing Opportunity will permit floor area to float, unused floor area to float from landmarks and historic districts to other zoning lots on other blocks. So the way it currently works is that floor area can be moved from a landmark across the street, but it requires a special permit. The receiving site has to be directly across or kitty corner from the granting site. And the receiving site is limited to 20%, a 20% increase in FAR. So housing opportunity will permit floor area from historic districts, properties, or landmarks to essentially go anywhere on an adjacent block. And, you know, you have a lot of historic districts in your community district. It's going to unlock a vast amount of the floor area that's locked up in the historic districts, but not all of them, because it has to be adjacent. Really, it's the places that are going to be most impacted by this are the non-landmark areas adjacent to historic districts. So while any zoning district can take the floor area, they're still governed by the bulk requirements. I think that there is an authorization to try, you know, if you need a waiver for bulk requirements, you can get it. But there is a process for that. But tower districts, there would be no process for that. And I picked out this one. This is Fifth Avenue. This is the C64 district, just north of, of the R10 that I showed on the map earlier. Here, it could suck up a whole bunch of floor area from all around and build a very, very large building here. It's not clear from the text if there is still a 20% cap, but it sure doesn't seem like it is, because it did not make reference to the 20% cap that exists right now. And if there is no cap to that increase, that means you could have very, very, very large buildings using this floor area, all with no special permit and no ULURP. And so this becomes, this area right here where you have towers and a flexible zoning district already, becomes very attractive. But really, any place is, proximity to historic districts within a block, and tower zoning becomes a much more attractive development site.
Michael has a question on this slide.
Yeah.
Thank you, George. Is there not a requirement now that the receiving site must provide a preservation plan to the granting site before the FAR can be moved?
Yes, that is exactly right. There is a requirement that there must be a plan to show preservation of the site. Absolutely. Yep.
And that is what the City Planning Commission examines now before they grant the authorization. Is that still in here or is it gone and is everything?
I'm
else-
gonna need to see the text for that one, Michael. I don't know that, it did not mention that in the scope of work. It seems that it's likely gone because if you don't have the special permit, they don't have to make the finding.
Right. I think that's very unfortunate, George. Thank you.
Thank you. Frederica,
I remember that, that preservation plan from the 74, 7-Eleven.
Yes,
And that was really, by the time we were seeing these buildings that were converting to luxury, that was really an obsolete requirement. Because the whole development was
conditioned
on the preservation of the building.
I think that's fair. There haven't been very many floor area transfers from landmarks. There have been like 24, mostly in Midtown since the program went into effect. So we don't have a lot of examples of, we can go back to and say, this is how it looked and how it worked.
any
Okay.
more? Okay, I don't see any more questions right now, George.
Okay, so City of Yes for Housing Opportunity will eliminate the Manhattan core treatment of certain zoning districts. So R6, R7, and R8 districts have special treatment in the Manhattan core. The FARs and heights permitted in these non-contextual districts are lower or sometimes lower in the Manhattan core when compared to the rest of the city. And the proposal will unify the FAR and heights of these districts throughout the city, which effectively, since your FAR and heights are lower for these districts, is an increase. So the way it works now is on R6 on wide streets, you're currently at 2.43 FAR. This will increase it to 3 because in Brooklyn, if you're in R6 and a wide street, you can get to 3 FAR. And likewise with R7 and R8, it's about a 20% increase to the base FAR on wide streets in these districts.
George, can you be quiet a minute? Because we need to get the captions down so we can see the bottom of your chart. I don't know.
He said it was the same. He said it was about 20%.
Oh, here we see. Okay, 20. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and then there are a few little things or smaller things. The tower and base bulk packing requirements are removed, which is a very big deal, but you don't have very many districts that require tower and base building form. The restrictions that prevent the conversions of non-residential space to residential use in the C61G and the C62G districts, which is this area in the extreme southeast of your district, that's going to be removed to encourage the conversions of non-residential space to residential space in these areas. There's a whole bunch of technical requirements on the Manhattan core parking rules. There are like 15 of them. I'm not getting into them. They're mostly relatively small and technical. And then there's going to be a bunch of changes to the dormer rules, the lineup provisions for the street wall and setback, but the details are not clear on that. Essentially, it seems like they're going to give more flexibility to matching if it's taller or shorter, and also lineup provisions in contextual districts. Again, that'll become clearer when we have text. And so I'm going to conclude this with some thoughts and considerations about this proposal and some things for you all to think about. So housing opportunity is almost entirely carrot and no stick. And it appears to be driven by supply side arguments that more housing is better. More housing will mean more affordability. And if you want to build rent regulated housing, it's fine. Housing opportunity will subsidize it with bonused floor area, but it will require no affordability unless there is a mandatory inclusionary housing, which is only mapped when there's an upzoning, which is not happening here. So personally, I was expecting to see something that would require some affordability. It's just not there. There also does not appear to address some other concerns which have been brought up in other communities. Like, for instance, this building here. This is a building that's Bigfooting, which is a huge building with very few units. This is 1165 Madison. It's not in your district, but it is a new 10 FAR, 210-foot building with 11 units. The top 4 stories is a quadplex, which means a single unit that occupies 4 stories. It averages 5,358 square feet per unit. So,
I want to live there.
yeah.
First.
So City of Yes, that like does absolutely nothing to require more units out of this building. It could have 11 buildings today. It could have 11 buildings after this, or I'm sorry, 11 units after this passes.
What is the vintage of that building?
It's.
It was just built brand new.
Brand new.
What's the cross?
It's right by the Met,
It's 86th Street. It's 86th Street and Madison Avenue.
Okay, I know it.
Pretty fancy building.
No,
Yes, it is. Their local retail sells diamond necklaces.
What's that? What did you say? I
The
didn't-
local retail sells diamond necklaces.
You can't get a container of milk, but you can get a diamond there.
There you go. Also, some neighborhoods in Manhattan have been hemorrhaging housing units to conversions and combinations. And so this map shows change in housing unit by block from 2010 to 2023. And so what we're seeing here is blue areas are areas that grow, red areas are areas that have shrunk, and yellow areas have no change. All right. So the areas that are showing housing unit loss are basically the West Village, the Upper East Side, and the Upper West Side. Why are we seeing housing unit loss? Well, in all of these areas, right, the small tenements being converted to single family homes. West Village, you've seen a lot of these things. This is one was just got an approval. 6 units, this building becomes 1 unit. But combinations in larger buildings are probably a bigger deal because a lot of co-ops see many combinations. Sometimes they're encouraged by their boards. And unit loss to combination, they're actually harder to track because they don't require a new certificate of an occupancy. They used to years ago, but no longer.
Right.
And there's nothing in housing opportunity that will stem the loss of units from conversions and combinations. And this is again the same map, but I blew it up here. And it's a special concern in areas with a lot of landmark districts like yours and the Upper West Side, because there just aren't many development sites, right? So you can't, once the units are lost, you never get them back. And, fewer people, you lose some vitality out of your neighborhoods. And the Upper East Side, I've complained about how there are some neighborhoods that have become seasonal. In the summertime, as people go to their second homes, or in the wintertime, as people go to their second homes, they empty out. And they've really lost a lot of their vitality, between Madison and Fifth Avenue in the lower part of the Upper East Side. It's a problem. And I don't know, and housing opportunity does nothing to address it. I also have a question about flexible floor area movements undermining the universal affordability preference. So my question is this: if developers can get their floor area from historic districts unencumbered by the requirement to provide any affordable housing, why would developers use the universal affordability program, right? Why would they do it?
They won't.
The major reason is 421A, right? I mean, if we had 421A, they would get some sort of subsidy, but we don't know what its replacement is going to look like yet, or even if it will exist, right? We're developing a policy that would be, that's very dependent on 421A's replacement, which doesn't exist yet. Finally, the lack of any affordability requirements makes progressive NYC oddly passive when it comes to affordable housing. This is my opinion now, but I'll share it. So I see most jurisdictions require a small percentage of affordable housing, about 10%, out of all new developments with no zoning bonus or direct subsidy. So this includes like virtually every jurisdiction in Westchester County If you want to build in White Plains, you have to get 10% affordable units, no zoning bonus, no direct subsidies, no zoning. It's just it's a formula. Residents and developers of these new developments are effectively subsidizing the affordable units that are being created. It's again, zoning isn't doing it. It's the developers and the residents of those buildings that are. And housing opportunity does nothing like this. And instead, we're relying upon optional programs and mandatory inclusionary housing where it exists, right? Because it's only triggered when there's a substantial upzoning. And, you know, to me, this seems like a lost opportunity. And I'm disappointed that more creativity didn't get into this. So the next steps, zoning for housing opportunity, as you know, it's going to be referred later. You'll have 60 days for your review. For economic opportunity, the CPC chair permitted boards to submit their comments 6 weeks after their due date, effectively extending the review period. I don't know if that's going to happen this time, but it should, because you're going to get in addition to the zoning change, you're going to receive a full EIS on this. You know, it's just going to be another 1,000 pages. And so you're going to need all the time you can get for your review. So if anybody can, you know, lobby the CPC chair to give you more time, I think it would be time well spent. The city has encouraged comments at any time on any relevant topic. You should, you know, take them up on that offer. And, you know, again, I think, you know, community districts should pay special concern to areas that they have the most stake in, right? And that's, I think, landmark transfers for you guys. I think it's going to be a very important to get this one right, as it will really shape the future of your district. That's it. That's all I have for you. I'm happy to have a discussion.
Thank you, George. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I just want to say one thing in response. When Eugene and I spoke to Chelsea Evans and Andy Cantu earlier this week, we did raise this question about the length of time, you know, that we got more time for economic or opportunity, and they didn't say to depend on it. You know, they, you know, want as many, you know, they want us to be efficient, but they felt it would be the similar opportunity. But, you know, Eugene pointed out, we can't go into August. You know, if we got an extension to July, that would be one thing, but, you know, it's the summer as well. So we have some natural brick walls here. So just to piggyback on that point. I think David and then Frederica.
I'm going to wait to the end on the second part, which was the economic opportunities, right? That was the second level, right?
Yeah, of the program, yeah.
And you mentioned there were a lot of comments on that, but I guess we should finish this first, and maybe you could give us the highlights of what you think are the most salient points that were brought up in that discussion, because I'd like to hear about that. You know, but let's finish this first.
Frederica?
Yeah, this was so helpful. The idea that the city planning wants us to comment on things that have nothing to do with us, I don't know why we would want to do that. I feel like our resources are spread thinly enough that we should focus on our stuff. If they want to give us resources to have you help us with things that have nothing to do with us, that might be a different story. But I really feel that we should focus on precisely the things that we care about.
And we know about.
And that we know about. Yes.
I tend to agree.
If you're encouraging us to look first at the changes in the landmark, the transfer of landmark FAR, I think we would do that. But I don't think we should be distracted by stuff that has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Anita?
Yeah, I'm curious about, I think one of the tables you showed were there are little tiny increases on these very low FARs. That would probably have a pretty big impact on the historic districts, because everyone's getting, I don't know, a couple hundred square feet more, and nobody leaves that on the table, period. So has that been, I mean, unless it just,
Well, you still got to go through, you still got to go to landmarks if you're in the historic district, and nobody's changing that. And landmarks will, zoning is one governor, but landmarks is another.
Yeah,
And so-
but zoning is money and landmarks has a hard time standing up to that, honestly.
Exactly.
Politics, business, money. So, as much as we have good, intentions, as do they buckle.
I
Because the
hear that.
zoning is, the law and it's, light and air and all that good stuff.
It is a increase in the R6, and the R6 is mostly in your historic district. Absolutely. And every R6
Seems
will
like
get,
such a minor improvement with a major impact.
Yeah.
that might-
it's a good observation because it's relatively small, but you take it over all of them, it's a lot of floor area.
Yeah.
With no affordable housing.
Nothing.
Well, this whole thing is ridiculous.
Perhaps that's the thing that I think that should be one of our main points, is that we're not interested in any development in any increased units that are not affordable. We should just make that stand.
I'd be a little more nuanced
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
we
not sure
have,
that I'd go along with that.
we do have some smaller spaces where that's not practical because we're talking smaller scale development. But I do think that we need to comment on some of the larger development. And I also think that we should comment on certain aspects of development outside of our board to support our adjoining boards, because in immediate proximity to us, not very large distance, have tremendous different existing conditions. And I think we should work to the extent possible, we don't have that much time, with the other boards to support their positions as well.
If
On
the
this, I
board
mean,
came to us and asked us to help them out, I would. But if we already got 1,500 pages on economic opportunity, and this is gonna be even bigger, then I feel that we really have to look out for ourselves. And I think you also make a very good point about being more nuanced. However, at the missing middle, they stressed repeatedly, they want a little bit of housing across the broadest possible area. And if you have a little bit of housing across the broadest possible area, there really is no way to manage affordable units in small pieces. So it's an undoable situation.
But that's kind of where the nuance comes in. A lot of the development isn't as large in a lot of our.
Who's gonna manage, I mean.
I just,
Westchester County, because they seem to be managing that.
But for us, who's gonna manage that?
Ask them, how do they do it?
Because I was.
Westchester County has a different situation they explained where it's not so, they have to do the percentage.
Well, maybe that's a good model instead of this one.
so one of the, and I don't know, George, maybe you can answer this. Are there any examples of models where offsite anything that gets moved somewhere else has been used effectively? Because every time that comes up, it seems that things just disappear.
Well, okay, I the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to get a affordable housing certificate from HPD, who certifies that those units exist, gives an address. It gives you the amount of square footage of affordable housing or affordable housing floor area is on the certificate. I could show you them; they exist. But I'm not ever going to say that things don't fall through the cracks sometimes, because they sometimes do. And I know that if there's developers who are reputable, they make certain to get them, because ultimately they could get into a lot of trouble if they don't have them. I'm dealing with something in Brooklyn right now where we can't find them, right? So I know it happens sometimes where people either don't file them or they don't follow through with them. But there is a process, and it's supposed to work a certain way. where they are supposed to exist.
Frederica?
I imagine there are certain situations where offsite housing and not in my backyard begin to look a lot alike, right?
The thing is that there's the decision on where those units go is entirely up to developer and HPD. Meaning, very often HPD is like the broker. People who have affordable housing credits to sell versus those who are looking to buy, they end up like matchmaking them. But ultimately, it's a private decision that is outside of the eyes of NIMBYs or your
Right,
board,
but our
right?
settling for that as a solution to our wanting more affordable housing could be misinterpreted as that.
Oh. Yeah.
And did you, you pointed out something that sort of has been murmuring through the board of late, particularly with a lot of our landmarks applications, which is the combination of units. And what can we, what are options that we can perhaps push for that when this value is created in that manner, or these units, what can we do that the city might disincentivize that or somehow offset that somewhere else? I mean, this is something we've been struggling with, but we have nowhere to talk about it. And this seems like an opportunity to perhaps talk about that.
Yeah, I think it is. I can tell you that planners like myself and some others have been saying, as a technical solution to this problem, you should have a reverse dwelling unit factor. Remember, we talked about the dwelling unit factor that they want to get rid of to ensure that units are too small. It would be the other side of that to ensure that the average unit size wouldn't be too big, right? And it could work. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't work. It's a limited resource, and you could still have your 5,000 square foot, quadplex, but it would have to be balanced off with lower sized units in the same building so that they average out to, some number, whatever that number is, 2,000, 2,500, whatever it is. So there's a way of doing it. There's another way of doing it is just saying no net unit loss. Which
5,000 square foot apartments.
But anyway, there are ways. There are absolutely ways, and I'm more than willing. If you want to get into that, it's something I actually have given it some thought independently of this application. Just as I see my own neighborhood transform, empty out, which I feel is just a little loss. I feel it every day a little bit.
George, do you think our area is going to be getting among the least affordable housing based on what we've heard tonight? Yeah.
Well, okay, so UAP, whether people use it or not is going to be dependent on the market, right? And so if your market rate units are like really good, meaning they could get a lot of money for them, I'm sure that most developers will use it, right? So in your area, which has high market rents, I expect that when you have new development, you will get to 20% affordable. But you don't have that many development sites, right? So you're just not going to see that much based upon new development. But when you do see it, I'm sure they'll use it. In places like East Harlem or, places where the rents are already lower, I'm not sure. I think a lot of it would depend on 421A and how good those subsidies are.
We have a situation in Hudson Square, and I grant you, when it was done, and I was very involved with this, the incentive for affordable housing was not significant enough. But as you said, the rents were so high, or the condo fees, if it was not rental, it was a condo or co-op, was so high that developers didn't want to use it. They didn't want to have affordable housing in their buildings. They didn't need to. They were making money hand over fist. And the incentive to use it, I mean, they got like, I don't know, a 5% FAR bump or something. It was ridiculous, And so consequently, development has not spurred anything of interest in Hudson Square. certainly residential development has been lackluster. And it certainly doesn't have any affordable component in it. Basically, there are a few here and there, but that's the problem. The problem is in a city and in a neighborhood like CB2, where demand for housing, luxury housing is in great demand, developers will not choose to get the FAR bump and have let's face it, they just don't want affordable housing if you're paying $2.5 million for a studio apartment.
It doesn't pencil out.
Well, I mean, it would pencil out if you end up with a really attractive 421A program, but then, you know, you and I are paying for that, right? That's.
I understand. I understand all the intellectual nuances of what you're saying, but a developer is, you know, okay.
I hear you.
I see both hands up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can ask George to drill down on that issue that, you know, we on the Landmarks Committee have been seeing for the last 20 years, and that's the reduction of units, which we can't do anything about on the Landmarks Committee. So I'm just wondering if, George, can you create some kind of a policy position on that that would allow you know, I mean, if I'm not saying we can get it passed, but at least you could establish a policy which would give us some leverage in that.
I'd love to. I can write it up for you. I mean, at least these thoughts that we've had, again, they're not entirely my own. They've been developed with colleagues about how to essentially prevent those types of wholesale conversions. And again, it would be using zoning. You couldn't change this policy or this proposal to adopt it because that would be out of scope, right? But if, you know, as a new policy, it's something that could be developed for sure.
So can we all agree that we would like that from George?
Yeah, I would.
Yes, that'd be great.
Great.
Can we do that, Mark?
We don't have any more money, but it would be.
No, just tell Mark about that.
So the other area which I'm interested in but have not looked at in detail, but what David brought up is the Hudson Square area.
Yeah.
That's really has significant potential development sites for us and for the future development in our area. That's where
It's possible.
it's possible, but also some good policy could really make a big difference for what comes out from that area. And it was rezoned whenever that was, but
Must be
you know, what's in there is what will define some, you know, probably either the next or the development cycle after that in the city will really occur in that area and then also along Canal Street.
Right.
And so those two areas I think are of significant interest.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, regarding Hudson Square, it's a special district. And again, you know, we don't have a lot of details on the changes to the special districts. We'll see that when we have zoning text, right? I know that there are some special rules about conversions in that district. I don't know how they're going to be changed to either, you know, facilitate new residential development or discourage it. Maybe, I don't know. So there's open questions on the special district.
I know, I see Frederica's hand up. Excuse me, and wait a minute, Frederica.
The operating-
Someone here from the public too, so after your comment.
Sure, thank you. Wasn't MIH the operating program for affordable housing in Hudson Square?
No, it wasn't mandatory.
What was the program that was the overlay for affordable housing in Hudson Square, if I'm not putting you on the spot?
No, it was voluntary.
I don't think so.
Sorry, none of this.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you in you know 5 minutes. But
Sure, thank you. Who has their hand up? Davey. And are there any comments in the chat?
The chat is actually in front of you and no, there are.
Okay, thank you. Pete, we're.
Okay, great. George, really good presentation as usual. Thank you. Couple of, one observation is that when the Soho NoHo rezoning went through,
yeah,
we tried to focus somewhat on the recreational rights on the roof for unit buildings with 15 or more units, which was totally ignored. It seems that the city is happier when those rights get sold to one person because that maybe generates a tax or something. I don't know. But if there's doing all this infill, is there any provision in this new stuff that encourages rooftop use for open space?
There is nothing in any of the materials we've gotten thus far on this.
Okay, I didn't think so. And also the one of the maps you showed, there was a large chunk of purple that was, that's basically the Chinatown part of Special Little Italy District, which seems to be the southern part of the Special Little Italy District from Broome to Canal, Bowery to Center. It seemed that was what that chunk of purple was.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, Bowery. Yep, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, that's all Special Little Italy District, but which has the mix of the demographics there have changed quite a bit over the last 20 years.
Yep,
much more Chinese.
Yep,
and that connects with Community Board 1 and Community Board 3.
Yes,
in that corner where, so all of that is impacted, and you just have to look at the Soho NoHo rezoning and the huge upzoning they planted in the corner, southeast, southwest corner of Soho. That's all along Canal Street. That's the model for what they're proposing here. Massive upzoning.
Well, just to clarify what that purple, what the rule change was in that purple area, which is the C61G and the C62G, that was an area that was rezoned, I think from a manufacturing area. And the G, what that does is it prevents conversions of non-residential space to residential space. The idea was that they didn't want, a lot of these job producing areas to, essentially be converted to people's homes. And that's what the rules currently do. And they want to get rid of those restrictions on conversions.
Well, and that's what they kind of did in Soho NoHo, where the residential wasn't allowed, and now they've made it. No, that's right.
That's right. That's right.
So I think in terms of working with nearby community boards, that the bleeding from our edges of our community board into the other community boards becomes very important. And then there was one other thing, but I can't remember what it is now. So anyway, thank you very much.
No problem.
Are there any questions from behind me that I can't see you?
I'll just.
Roy?
Like a copy of the presentation. I don't have it yet, but I'm George already said he'll send it my way, and I will be glad to share it.
So you're expecting this is going to get referred fairly soon, and then the 60 days will begin. And so do you have suggestions on what we might use our 60 days for? Meaning if we have 2 more meetings on this, what should we be doing at the next meeting in preparation for the final?
Well, just so that everyone knows, yeah.
Yeah, so the next scheduled meeting for land use, I think it's May 8th.
Yeah.
We do have DCP scheduled, so they will be presenting out, their community board roadshow.
That's kind of what I mean, because that's going to eat up that meeting.
It is, unfortunately, it is going to eat that meeting.
And so I think there's so many nuances here where we might have an opportunity, if they're actually soliciting our feedback, that we can present. And I just don't want to miss the opportunity because.
You're saying to have them come at a separate meeting altogether?
Whatever, I'm just saying, how are we going to use our time?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Because we'll miss, because if we leave it to the last meeting, we're never going to get anything.
That's right, because we need a meeting to work on the resolution.
Yeah.
So one option is Katie and I and Mark have looked at the calendar to see if there's any other evenings we can schedule for an additional land use meeting to get us back together. I think we will need it because, we're gonna eat up the next meeting with DCP. We're gonna need a meeting to work on the resolution. And then that's actually our
Or
two
you
meetings, and then we have.
need to come at a separate meeting. That's not a stated.
Well, we
meeting.
tried,
We tried,
and they would not come. We tried to actually get them to come earlier. We were trying to get a meeting scheduled at the end of April. They didn't want to because they weren't sure when they were gonna get this referred out. And so they were actually pushed for the May meeting.
Yeah.
We tried to get them to come earlier.
We're gonna have to have two meetings.
But I would say
So I
that
think
if
we're
they're
gonna
gonna
have-
come,
yeah.
if they're gonna come and they're gonna repeat what they do on April 17th, that's a waste of our meeting. Right? We're gonna watch the April 17th rollout of, and then I think if we have them come back in May, it should be to address all of the points that George has pointed us towards that are specific to us and completely insist that they don't give us some roadshow that they give every place.
They did ask us to give them our questions before the presentation,
Mhm.
so which implied that they would tailor the
That would be
presentation.
great, but I would tell them, we absolutely don't want to see
don't wanna repeat.
in May,
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
could watch in April. Do
Maybe
you think
they
that's?
Good luck with that. I don't think they're gonna,
They have to.
But otherwise.
I mean, we
otherwise-
can ask, but
we can ask.
We should also be asking our communities for their input on questions as well beforehand. Because that way we can get better feedback. I mean, I'm just trying to get this all done earlier because,
Right.
we end up spending a lot of time talking about it. We can't do it after these presentations because it always seems too much.
Yeah, it is too much.
And we have no idea how many people may or may not participate.
Well, one
From the
person that
public.
we know can be, was Andrew. Andrew Berman is gonna have a lot to say about this landmark.
I think so.
But I mean, and we'd rather get that earlier, not at our last meeting with.
Presentation, we want a response to our questions. Right?
I think it's a mistake not to have a presentation from the agency who is.
But they're given 3 already. and
No, but for us, I mean, it's just,
Generic.
it's a bad practice to not take.
Well, maybe they could, or we don't need
Yeah.
to have, take
If
up
you had
time
more
with,
than
what's
60
going
days,
on
that
in
would be good.
Queens.
But I think we do have more than 60 days. I think we have until July.
Well, can I just
That's
jump in on
not
that real
guaranteed.
quick for a second, because
Yeah.
I've heard 417 and 429 kicked around just now, and it makes a huge difference if we strictly go by the calendar, not the plus that Dan Garodnick may or may not give us.
Right.
Because if it's certified on 429, then you can get all the way through June full board.
Right.
But if it's certified on the 17th, you don't.
No,
And DCP said they thought it was gonna be certified by 30th, that, I think their words were, if they were gonna bet on it, it would be certified April 30th.
April 29th, yeah.
Which
And
is
Chelsea said the
29th
same thing
meeting.
today to me, so.
yeah,
We
that-
want the
we're on
later
that.
date.
Yeah,
we
We want the later date,
of course we do, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And Mark, the 17th is the information session that DCP is holding. I don't think anybody is expecting certification on the 17th.
Or the 19th, which is the next meeting.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Okay,
and if we don't get it,
Your
then it's
lips
gonna
to
be
God's ears.
29, yeah.
I see
Yeah.
Janine, by the way.
Janine actually-
Hi, Janine.
Hi, sorry to join late. I wanted to just suggest, we should include a link to the April 17th presentation. You know that the one that they're going to give us is going to be almost identical. I wish I had done this for the Soho NoHo meeting, and because I had asked them to cover specific things, and the response I got was, it's my presentation. I'm going to give what I want. And I had given a set amount of time, which was 30 minutes. And I wish I had given a shorter amount of time. So that is probably the only way to do it, is we will give you our questions in advance, and we know you have a canned presentation. We'd like you to limit it to X. And then we can have a more productive meeting, so the whole meeting isn't taken up by the presentation.
Give them 8 minutes.
And I think that George has really helped by tailoring, by helping us focus on what we need to. Because the issue becomes when they give a presentation is that people start engaging with issues that are not relevant, which has sort of been my whole point, is how do we get down that we're using that 60 days about talking about, the meat and potatoes that has a real impact for us.
Yeah.
And comments, and I mean, even if it's like looking at just that R10, from 13th down to what, I mean, those are the areas where, development can happen. I'd love to know more about the Hudson Square, Canal Street, and just really drill into that stuff. And, we've got a couple of big other sites that were identified in this NoHo rezoning. How would those two big sites be impacted by these changes? And that helps us
And how,
in reality of what's.
and whether they want to override all the special zoning districts.
Right.
That is a big issue, overriding a special zoning district without a ULURP, just an administrative change. It's a big issue.
Or a change to this that might incentivize a different decision-making matrix that would result in the actual underlying goal of what we wanted to see in those rezonings. The big issue that we have is housing versus office development in a lot of areas, and our development sites, that's, we already saw, that's just about to come online, a building that chose to develop as an office building, even though a rezoning would have potentially allowed it to be developed as housing on Bowery and 4th Street.
Right, 4th Street.
I mean, so this stuff is important to us because we've seen some development that is not, we have Varick Street where Trinity is developing an office building that was originally supposed to be housing. We have sites in Hudson Square. I mean, those are the things I'm interested in, understanding where there might be some benefit here.
They did say that they may have to come back to us a couple times. So they might, this is what they said, I'm only repeating. And we did ask them if 380 Hudson Street could be impacted. And they said, maybe. So, those are that's an open question as well.
Before we leave, George, can you give us the sort of highlights of the economic opportunity comments that you said were so plentiful?
Yeah, so they made a lot of technical changes. I know that there was, the big one that I think you all might be interested in is they did make some changes to home occupations. So the home occupation was, if you remember, they didn't have a hard height or hard size limit. And they're reinstituting a hard size limit of 1,000 square feet per unit. So, to limit the idea that you could just keep expanding and, doubling your commercial floor area in your unit. And so there's now 1,000 square foot limit. There's also, they changed a lot of things regarding the objectionable effects. They added more objectionable effects that you can't do in your unit, but they're still leaving the occupations. So you could do anything there. You could have your barber shop. It's just that you would be limited to 1,000 square feet. They made some changes on the entertainment. The idea that if you have a dance floor, you are by definition a use that will allow for dancing and entertainment. That wasn't in there before. They made a bunch of changes to reflect uses and use groups. That came mostly from the Department of Buildings, because the Department of Buildings was going to say, you have a use group 6 now that means one thing, and a use group 6 tomorrow, which will mean something else. How are we supposed to interpret everybody's certificate of occupancies? And so they ended up changing all of the numbering into Roman numerals instead. So now they're going to be Roman numeral 6 as opposed to numbers, Latin numeral or Arabic numeral 6, because they keep, the differences straight. There's a summary sheet that that has all of these on, and what I'll do is I'll forward that to Mark, and he can send it all to you. And there's like a bunch of other things as well.
They haven't changed the idea that if you're living in apartment 6B, that 6C can have a commercial use in it. It could be a barber shop or a dog grooming salon.
Yeah, no, they're keeping the stacking rules the same. They've tightened up some of the environmental rules to try to make certain that they have lesser impacts. But conceptually, they did a lot of changing or tightening up the environmental rules, but they're basically keeping a lot of the intention the same. More addressing what people have concerns over, the negative effects on people.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so are there any more questions for George?
Sean's got his hand up, and then you saw.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Yes, I saw your hand earlier. Hi, Sean.
Yeah, hi, George. Yesterday, Adams had as part of this City of Yes, had a press conference in which one of the speakers belonged to a group called legalizedancing.org, and they want to legalize dancing. And you mentioned something about if it has a dance floor, then it's, I think, ipso facto, dancing is allowed. I thought that law, the cabaret law, was repealed in 2017.
It was.
So isn't it legalized? Could you explain why it's not legal? Why
sure. It's because in 1989, a whole bunch of changes were made to zoning that essentially made it difficult to have what we commonly call a nightclub or an eating and drinking establishment with dancing. It makes it really hard to cite. I mean, they're not illegal, but you have to be like in a manufacturing area. And so that's why the meatpacking district is such a nightclub hub, right? Is because it's an M district. And so what this does is it makes it much, much easier to cite these in any commercial district, right? And you'd have a C1, which is the lightest commercial district, can now have a nightclub. A place where you have live music and dancing and cover charges and showtimes.
Thank you.
And Sean, you bring up a good point. Dancing, the cabaret license actually had higher hurdles for safety that were included with it, because the premises generally had higher numbers of occupancy and were dark, etc. And that's what all the requirements, and the cabaret law versus a cabaret permit, I think are two different things.
Yeah.
Most of those was it 9 or 12, the use group. And in my experience over the years, we have between, somewhere from 7 to 12 actual spaces that actually are zoned in that manner. The number is not very high.
Right.
So it was to open it up a lot, but the pushback that we always heard from operators was that people were doing it illegally, but the ones that followed the rules had significant expense hurdles to follow the requirements to make it safe.
Mhm.
And so those were some of the open issues there, but all the other issues for the smaller places, but that was the bigger ones.
Are there any other comments or questions for George or George for us? I don't, thank you, George. I don't see any other hands up. I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Good luck on all the reading.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Bye now.
Okay, good night. So we do have to do business because
We have to go back to vote on 601.
that's what we have to vote on 601. So everyone was here. Any comment on 601?
Can we go through the 4 findings that they're supposed to come out? Because I just.
Is anybody against it? I mean, I'm for it. Is there anybody against?
Yeah, do you guys, does anybody have feedback on the 4 areas we're supposed to look at, the comment on?
Okay, what are the 4 areas that were?
Do you?
I'm just curious. This is sort of one of the issues. If we're going to start having driveways that are put in on, you know, all these buildings in the area of the vicinity.
It's going.
Yeah, but the whole area is now residential and before it wasn't. So the number of foot traffic, I mean, we've had, you know, 3 huge buildings built, you know, and another one's on the way, 176 affordable units.
Well, look, just for the sake of time, can we just say, right, what's the opinion of the committee? I mean, are there people who are contemplating voting against it? And if so, we can pursue this,
Here-
but.
We have you're not here, but we have a handout here, and the 4 findings are, I'll read them out and we'll just decide. I understand, but we'll just go through the procedure. We have the location of the vehicular entrances and exits will not unduly interrupt the flow of pedestrian traffic associated with uses of public facilities, including access points to mass transit facilities, which there aren't in close proximity, or result in any undue conflict between pedestrian and vehicular movement due to the entering and leaving movement of vehicles. And they said they were going to provide a light, because that is a danger.
Did they say that? Because.
Well, we're gonna,
They did.
Say that, that was my.
I said they will get back to us.
That part.
They get back to us whether it was.
Somewhere in there
Right.
is the word flash.
There was gonna be some kind of pedestrian thing.
It's a description of the operation of the whole.
Okay,
Because when they say stop sign with the garage would be clearly visible to exiting drivers, and a speed bump will be located within the entrance exit lane to slow down exiting vehicles prior to crossing the sidewalk, along with visually checking left and right before entering the street. Pedestrian motion sensors and mirrors will assist the driver in ensuring the path is clear and safe. Once the car is clear, the garage door sensors, the door will close. So nothing right there says it.
Yes. But
it's not, that's about the drivers, not about the
It's a
pets.
fascinating description of how the whole thing works. I
Right.
think It says something. about that.
Okay, but we want to be sure about
Because I was,
I was fascinated by the road.
Garage door will open and the warning indicators of the garage will flash red.
Okay.
top, number 5, description of the proposed development. And this is inbound drivers will flash red. Does it say anything about outbound? That's
The warning indicators outside the garage will flash red when they're going in. That's entering.
But the outbound is a more difficult thing for the beds. So we want that out.
let's make a note of that and.
Yeah.
Make sure.
I mean, because that seems like that flashing is for the drivers going in, not any pedestrians on it.
Yeah, that's
Not for the benefit of pedestrians.
exactly.
Read that.
Is there a residential building directly across the street from the entrance to the garage?
I don't think so.
I mean, if
I think it's
it's
better.
resident, you know,
Not
if
yet.
it's actually light, no,
Is it
Yeah,
yeah.
it's FedEx?
my point,
No, okay.
my point in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
They also said it would be less, whatever whatever study they did, they said it would be less than 1 car per hour.
well, that makes sense. Only 7 cars.
Right.
7 cars, 7 cars.
It's not a public garage where they're coming in for 2 hours.
7 cars, they'll go to the Hamptons on Friday and come back on
Afternoon, the
Sunday.
door will open, the 7 will go open on Sunday. They'll all come back.
If they do that.
I do walk on that
I
block.
think I want to vote for this. I don't.
Right, guys, we have a thing, does nobody want to review what it is we comment on? I mean, this is a big problem we have on most of our committees. You don't even know what you're commenting
Excuse
on.
me, I did
So-
read the entire.
I know, so if we're discussing it, why not go through it point by point, point?
Number 2, location of vehicular entrances, and exits will not interfere with the efficient functioning of streets, including any lanes designated for specific types of users or vehicles. There are none on that block. So I think we're fine on that. Number 3, such use will not create or contribute to serious traffic congestion and will not unduly inhibit surface traffic and pedestrian flow. Well, we are concerned about the pedestrian flow. That's why we want more lighting. And such parking facility will not be inconsistent with the character of the existing streetscape. It's a very
The door.
a very modest, no attention calling door.
It's only 1 door.
Yes, only 1 door.
And 1 curb cut.
So those are the 4 findings, and the thing that, that we are concerned about is the pedestrian issues. So,
And the reason that's important, because it's an unattended parking facility
yeah, there's no,
with a door that opens up that you can't see and you don't realize it's an active parking garage. And that's a big difference.
So it's not a ULURP, but still it would be appropriate to say we recommend approval with, on condition that X. You mentioned the lighting, additional lighting.
Blinking lights, strobe.
Yeah, it's not attended, but they're not just throwing a car out into the street. They said there's gonna be a warning when the car exits the building.
Well,
No,
they're not speed bump. They don't say there's a warning. It's, but it's all dependent on the driver reacting.
But
Well,
what's the
they're
light? The light
facing
is-
out, which is good.
We don't have many, if any,
Hot comments are.
driveways that are in areas where people walk that are private driveways that you
Right.
just open the
Yes,
door.
we do, at the NYU buildings.
And the
No.
building,
No, those are loading docks.
the building that I-
Those are loading docks.
The building that I live in is a residential building. We have a garage in the cellar. And as we exit, we have a flashing red light to warn people who are passing by that a car is coming out.
that's,
Everyone in the building knows that we must wait and make sure that nobody is walking. And that flashing red light remains until the garage door closes and we're safely out.
That's what they're suggesting.
So there are other examples in our area where that works.
And there are
Many
towns
examples.
village that have garages and
Many,
there's
yeah.
nobody doing anything, so.
well, this is our, so,
Has to be a big garage.
so is there a motion to say we recommend approval with the condition that there is more visible pedestrian warning?
I would agree.
On the
Fine
in
with
and
me.
the out.
Yes, good.
Oh, in and out, okay. In and out, it's a pedestrian warning for the cars as they enter and exit.
That's correct.
Yes.
Any,
If they exit, there's probably more.
Why don't
right,
you
yeah,
tell them?
that's
Both,
more.
it's both, it's both, it's both.
But
In
we're
and out.
both.
Drivers routinely just run over.
Okay, is there any, are there any objections, abstentions, or recusals?
One of the key aspects of safety here was that the car is moved around 180 degrees when it goes in. And that
It's
should,
on a turntable, it's on a turntable.
right, and that should be a requirement that that remains because that's probably the most important safety feature.
Yeah,
Well, they said that
Without that, so.
well.
Oh, no.
They can, they put that out as a safety feature.
No backing out.
Around that.
They said it would come out facing.
Right.
yeah, we're,
Why they.
okay, that's good. I think we should really emphasize that. I agree.
It was.
Okay, I'm going to say unanimous, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. To be continued.
Thank you.
And
And we did you get the community voices report, visioning from
Yes.
that came today at 388 Hudson.
Yes.
And when will we know?
Oh,
We can plan the non-scheduled meetings, like the meeting schedule. When will that be?
Can I say something? I want to hear what you want, but I also want a chance to say something about that report that we got on 388.
It interestingly, I'll say two things and then you can go. Interestingly, it did not emphasize that CB2 repeatedly asked for a recreation center. That was sort of secondary.
Number one.
And windows were not, the windows that were there
The
are
windows
not
is
the
a
ones. that-
mistake. It has to be a mistake.
Right.
Well, those are the ones from the.
I didn't read it.
And the large ones, right?
It said a window to ceiling to floor. And then it showed the 4 different types of windows. And it showed the responses, the frequency of response. And there was like 2 votes for tiny windows and 2 votes for this floor to ceiling. And the bulk of it was precisely in the middle range. And in their description, it said the neighborhood wants floor to ceiling. So I think that's actually worth a call to show them, not a letter or a reso, but to just say, I think you made a mistake.
And it's not what we.
And the other thing was
It's
that
not what-
everything
it's not
that we
what the
didn't
community
like
said.
about the draft is in the final, including the thing about the importance of the affordable supermarket.
I know.
Oh, you're
Okay,
kidding. They
so I
said
think
that.
that's worth a mention.
Well, they- we already had to- I just scanned it,
it.
but what I saw was the windows. The other thing I was questioning was the brick, because I thought it was kind of even between the brick and the concrete, but I could be wrong with that. I didn't look at that side, so.
No, but they
So we-
came down a brick.
They said brick, but they didn't mention the concrete, and I just wondered if they were
The
both.
size of the windows is just a mistake.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think you guys said that.
Eugene,
They want to build a curtain.
I just want to ask you a question. In any of our discussions with them, did they say the supermarket is really not appropriate? I mean,
No, they never,
no, because
we said
Commented.
that.
Right?
we said,
No, we said that the fact that the supermarket was there, we didn't believe that that was a good use of the space.
Right.
We also had comments that, you know, there were no options in the survey for them to pick. You know, I don't think there was an option for them to pick a community space.
recreation.
A recreation
never
space.
said.
No,
They didn't offer it.
I mean.
They-
They
Structured it to do what they wanted it to do.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
all surveys, they're structured to get the answers that they want.
Right.
Not what we want, what they want. That's
Exactly.
what all surveys are like.
But regarding the supermarket, my recollection was that they said in the draft that that the neighborhood wanted an affordable supermarket. We pointed out all the supermarkets. We pointed out Trader Joe as an
Yes.
example of an affordable one.
Mhm.
But then in the statistic that showed where people came from who responded to the survey,
Mhm.
it was like 60% who said they lived in the neighborhood. So if 60% of the people in the neighborhood think that we need an affordable supermarket, it's hard to fight that.
Those answers aren't, we don't know if they're correlated to where people live.
Right, they weren't able to
Correct,
tell
but
us.
It's a fact.
But no one has an affordable supermarket these days.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, it's affordable.
That's what you're gonna get.
Is there, I mean, I know we've a little,
too far.
obviously the RFP, et cetera. Is there any thing that we might want to write to anybody to have as a separate letter who's considering this about that we would have just separately in addition to our resolution or a cover
Yeah, our
letter
city
with the
council.
resolution,
Our city council.
Anita,
you know, yeah, I'm just to share,
you know, those other.
We've got to share.
Pioneer.
yeah,
They don't-
proactively, the big, you know,
I know it's.
I mean,
in the process, right? If there-
They
I mean,
Conversations, because obviously hit us a good spot, so I'm glad everyone is engaged. David, what are you saying? What are you saying?
I'm saying, I'm picking up on what Carter said. We should reach out to Eric. For better or for worse. If Eric was really, really engaged with this, he should have a little meeting with us in his office. Like we had, what was that meeting we had in his
Downtown.
office? Huh?
I remember.
No, not on 36th Street, where his office was.
Oh,
We had a meeting and we discussed a lot of stuff. It wasn't an official CB2 meeting. It wasn't a quorum. There were 3 or 4 people, some other people, there were 6 or 7 people there. And we said, Eric, this is what's important to us, you know, and
About
Oh,
388.
that was separate, that, I think.
No, that was
had
down-
To do with, you met with the community, I don't think it was us for outdoor dining. You should go up there and talk to them.
Are you talking about the meeting we had like with Janine and Susan?
we should ask Eric if he could sit with us and really
Yeah.
focus in.
My issue is just getting it to whoever is responding to the RFP.
It has to be Eric.
No,
This is a
the-
document that accompanies the RFP.
right, it's something that we would proactively share early on. And when,
Should we write a res?
to whom?
actually those responding to the RFP.
Responding to the RFP.
Yeah, just so they understand, I mean, it's not like we.
They're not gonna share that.
No, I'm talking about the people applying to build the building. You know, we've got to share, come up with some, the developers, what do we think? So they just see. You know,
Is that,
It's an-
you think we have that
Developer-
opportunity?
I don't know.
Have a different goal.
I mean, it could be posted right on the
He
website.
is a very
Like they were gonna-
fit kind of.
I understand,
package.
but I'm just.
Is that-
That's, once the people in the beginning start putting pencil to paper, get the thoughts in their heads about what is actually.
No, Carter's right, because I think at this point, when we have the we did CVR and it's already pre-baked in with some of these answers. We're already like limiting the choices the RFP is gonna take, right? I mean, at this point, the next step the RFP is gonna have, you know, developer's gonna say, we can put a grocery store there, if that's.
Can we say only excellent architects should respond?
One word about.
That's not subjective.
No, but it's another situation where they survey letter from a community participation involvement. It's not defined for, right?
Oh, I,
And so that the way
I'm
the time
so
I
dated
read it,
at this
it was a
point.
waste of time with
That's bad.
Elizabeth Street Gardens. It was a waste of time with NYU. You know, what do we spend?
These questionnaires anymore, because everybody feels they're a waste of time.
And the questionnaires are so structured to get the answers that they want,
Right.
and it's, you know.
They never changed their direction. I gotta tell
Exactly
you,
right.
it's so sad.
100%
We
right.
work ourselves to a tizzy and they just keep going.
We have
straight.
influence.
What can we do to add our choices back in?
I don't know.
You know, I mean.
They have to do something radical like paintball or something, you know, like something that'll
Ourselves to
wake somebody up because they're all on automatic. They
I
got
know, it's like going to the next step on it, you know.
it out. So
They map it out before they.
So-
before we get that.
same thing. Nothing changed from beginning to
We're
end.
gonna get like another like Whole Foods.
This meeting's adjourned, I'm going home. Are we adjourning?
Yeah, well, I care more about a supermarket. Hey, they come and go,
Just give us 10 seconds.
but.
Who
what
is
is
writing
it?
this letter?
Building.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a matter of sharing this at
Just-
the point as this moves forward. So that it's more available to whoever would participate
Ah,
responding to this. So that they also see some extraneous information about, you know, what we've.
Who is your target? I don't.
Well, in
The
the
person who's
developer.
building the building.
Well,
How about?
I mean, you're gonna have like a group of different
Obviously,
teams.
of course.
The thing that I think people worry about is keeping it fair, that everybody gets the same information at the same time and not.
Asking, is there a way that, sorry.
No.
So is there a way that we could like create a letter and then have that inserted as part of the RFP that they distribute?
We don't know if they would agree to that.
No.
We can ask.
Well, we could,
But
I mean,
we-
that's,
Mentioned in their
They probably
report that
won't.
they have 4 resos from the
Yes, they do.
community board. So for us to summarize, well, a lot of the stuff that we actually commented on is now passé. But this business of the supermarket, the business of the fine.
windows.
the Design excellence, the windows, they calling it a rec center. We want a rec center, not a cultural center. Those are things that doesn't take a long letter to get those.
That's right. And,
Yeah.
and they get people understanding what.
Yes.
Because if you look at the response, just to everybody's point, you have a wider range of options.
Mhm.
But it seemed to be more clear that,
Okay, so it's clear what we want. Does that influence the developer?
Oh, I don't know.
Does it?
it might,
I don't know.
well, I mean, if what we write is
What?
representing what
we
the.
want brick.
yeah.
I can't hear you.
We want brick. Not
You
concrete.
know, in a talented hands, the materials to me
Okay,
are incidental.
design excellence.
Yeah, you
I-
can do a lot with it, with
Right.
paper, you
I,
know.
I think that
because-
one of our biggest things we wanted though was the use in the ground floors and to not comment on that. And to allow that option to sit open with some of the feedback and the rain
I agree.
is, and I think that you're, no, David, you're right.
This is demanded.
I don't, but you have a say in that.
He doesn't have.
No, I.
We don't say.
To support,
I mean, but he doesn't have to say, where do we?
but I'm just.
Now you have to put a
Okay.
7-page.
Motion to adjourn.
Are we,
That's not quite-
yeah.
So moved. All in favor?
I.
Conversations can continue, expect some.
Don't move the owl camera.
All right.
We had.
If you guys just, the dates would be really helpful.
I